Good evening. My name is Adrian Lewis, and I'll be talking to you today from the subject of think outside the box, your personal box. I'll be speaking of my personal experience from my former employer, Sony Electronics. I'll be talking about the day which we found out that our store was going to close. I entitled that "One Month to the Inevitable. What do you do?" In this assignment, we're supposed to talk about what we learned through wisdom and through going through the situation. And one of the things that we learned about that we experienced was having to balance reality with what we perceive to now be a lie. The lie being that we were always told that we were doing a good job, our company stood behind us, and that nothing would ever change. But now we had to deal with the reality of that. In less than a month, our store would be closing, and we would all be unemployed. And one of the things that one of the books talks about is openness is paired with a reflective stance about experience. And so when you balance that, you look at the balance of the reality of the fact that we were closing and having to go through that experience of dealing with all the emotions of being told that you were doing well, you were a top performing store, but the reality is now we have to balance that we're closing. We also have to deal with what is important. What is important to each individual person? It's different. What is important to myself, what is important to my subordinate, and even my leader varies. Maslow talks about in the book, he says his hierarchy of human needs begins with the basic physiological and safety needs, proceeding to needs for belonging and love. So when you look at that, you have to think about the emotional decisions, the thought process going into how do I deal with my basic level of surviving, my income, how do I provide food for my family. Everybody processes that different about how they actually will do that. You have to think about where we were raised, where each individual was raised, things that we're taught to actually how to acquire those things. What now? What do we do now? The book talks about true emotional intelligence might be situationally dependent. I look at that when I look at our employees and I say, everyone acts differently in different scenarios. In a group of friends, you may be emotionally strong when a situation arises that you're uncomfortable with. But when you're dealing with losing your job, you may not be emotionally strong. It can truly change and be dependent upon the situation that you're in. And as a leader, you have to look at that and be willing to balance it and figure out how you can be effective for your subordinates. The next subject is there is an I in team, and in dealing with a store closing, although we are a team, you still have to deal with each individual emotion, each individual's thought processes, wisdom that they've been passed down. The book talks about, therefore, if my goal differs from those others that they strive for, and I am more in tune than anyone else about my goals, I am the one best positioned to understand the values that will get me there. So when you think about that, I think about listening to my employees talk about, what I have to do for me to get me to where I need to be. Whereas before, it was always about the team. What can we do to be successful? And you have to balance that mindset of that change, because the truth is there really is no more team at this point. You do have to focus and deal with yourself. I think one of the things that could have been done differently, looking back, is if we would have had more training on stress and wisdom theories. Because I think in dealing with learning more about stress and how to work with it and how to deal with it, we would be able to give our employees tools to kind of help balance that. How to balance that stress of dealing with, hey, in 30 days you're not going to be employed. How do you go forward? How do you look for a job while still having the requirements of another job? I think the specific principles that would have enabled me to make these improvements would have been the arsenal practices for dealing with stress. The other principles would be the principles of individualism and consumerism, where you can really learn about where individual stands in their own wisdom, their own thoughts, and the consumerism wisdom theory, where you learn about why people make decisions based upon just financial gain, or based upon the thought process of, if I don't have a job, I can't acquire stuff. So I think with these different principles, we would have been more successful during those last 30 days. And I think going forward now in my career choices, I will be using these principles to kind of help myself deal with those stress levels, as well as to be able to have a better understanding of the way that I will work with my subordinates. Thank you.